certainly given us a lot of time for reflection, and even obviously that reflection still continues in 2021 because some parts of the country are in lockdown. Do you think we are ready to apply the life lessons we've learnt during the pandemic? And do you think we're going to be able to sustain them forever, or are we going to go back to our old ways?
Yeah, that is the question, capital T, capital Q. I was speaking recently to a retired American academic who had worked in London in the early 1950s, just a few years after the end of World War II. And he was initially shocked by the number of Londoners who said to him, you know, we really miss the war.
Wow.
And he thought, how could you possibly miss the war? And of course, they weren't saying we miss the bombs, we miss the rubble, we miss the death and destruction and disruption and all of that. What they were saying was we miss the solidarity. We miss the sense of people really pulling together and really looking out for each other. And if someone's in a jam, they just go and help them without a backward glance, regardless of their own appalling situation. In other words, what they were saying was we were better as a people during the war than we are now that we've reverted to the kind of life we had pre-war. Mm-hmm. Now that shocked him because you would think that something like a war would change people forever. But there, at least some people were saying, well, it changed us for a while, but it didn't change us forever. We've lost that sense of solidarity and so on. So this is the big question, Louise. It has the pandemic, closely following on the heels of the bushfires, been enough of a disruption, enough of a fright to cause us to internalize these lessons we've been talking about and stick with them. Mm-hmm. Now, by contrast with that academic and the story you told me about London, when I reflect on the members of the generation who were young adults raising families in the years of the Great Depression of the 1930s in Australia, I spoke to a lot of them in my research career, and they always said, I mean, not universally, but typically they said two things. First, that was the worst time of our lives. It was a time of absolutely terrible hardship and deprivation, unemployment like you couldn't imagine today, and it went on forever, years and years. We often wondered if we were going to be able to put a meal on the table for the kids, and often we were only able to because neighbours pitched in and pooled their resources and so on. It was awful. And then the second half of their story was, but you know, it was the making of us. We learned lessons about the need to look out for each other, to contribute to the neighbourhood. We got our values straight, we got our priorities straight, and those lessons never left us. And we became a laughing stock in our family as being the people who would never throw out a piece of string and the people who would always bake a cake when a new neighbour moved into the street and go and make a little welcome speech and so on. But they were proud of that, of course. And they said it was the hardship that taught them the lessons that led to them never letting go of those values. So we don't know. Because we've been living through 30 or 40 years of social change, pushing us in the opposite direction, making us more individualistic, more competitive, more materialistic, let's be blunt, more selfish, has this, what might turn out to be a 2-year experience of COVID-19, is this enough of a disruption? In Melbourne, people are probably saying, yes, thanks, we've had quite enough of a disruption. Is it enough of a disruption for the effects to become permanent? Well, that's why I wrote the book. What I'm really saying is let's turn the crisis into a revolution. Let's not just slip back into the way it was. Let's reflect on how we've behaved during this period, because generally speaking, people are saying we're quite proud of how we've behaved. we've done rather well. We have been kinder. We have been more considerate of other people. We have made sacrifices for the common good. We like that about ourselves. Well, wouldn't it be a tragedy? In fact, wouldn't it be rather pathetic if we just let all this go and went back to the way we were? So I have no idea whether it will stick, but I'm doing everything in my power to encourage people to make it stick.